room to actually connect with people and get underneath it, right? Because clearly Vox has gone like so much of the media left. And it's not about left or right at this point. It's about the fact that Vox, literally like so much media left of center, no longer is trying to actually have a discourse, a dialogue. They're simply trying to run a narrative. That narrative will determine what facts they'll report. It'll determine what facts they'll substantiate, and it'll determine what opinions they'll allow in. Meanwhile, Vince Vaughn, similar kind of thing. You know, if you remember, he was at a football game, hung out with Donald Trump, shook hands, had fun conversation, and got blasted. Vince Vaughn's an independent, always has been. Claims the only person he ever actually supported was Ron Paul, ran as a libertarian. But Vince Vaughn's point was this, and I thought what he said was so amazing, because he said, he did an interview, I don't know, the LA Times or somewhere like that. He says, look, you know, the reality is, he's like, I grew up in a household where we learned to value diversity of ideas. And the most powerful thing he said is, the truth is, we should make the most space, have the most capacity to allow and protect people whose opinions aren't like ours. That's actually what free speech is about. I get it. There's limits. I get it. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's like the old standard, right? Like that's like so 100 years ago. But I also get that you can't put things out like, you know, I want to go chop everybody's heads off who's blank or whatever it is. I get you can block moves to incite violence or excessive hatred, but blocking people for having views you don't like, blocking people who say there was fraud in the election, seriously? I mean, FYI, there was fraud in the election. Whether it's going to get Trump elected or not, whether it's enough to do that, are you kidding me that there wasn't fraud? I mean, you'd have to literally be living under a cave below Joe Biden's basement to think that there wasn't fraud. I mean, maybe the right had fraud too. I don't know, but there was fraud. There was fraud all over the place. So if someone says there's fraud, for that you are censored and not allowed to speak. I've said it before, the editor of the Daily Wire simply wrote, this should go to court. There's enough information to investigate this. And his tweet got censored as misinformation. Where's the misinformation? We should go to court? That's where you take issues that are divided and solve them. I think there's enough to look at. That you censor that as misinformation. That kind of censorship is hurting this country, and it's going to hurt the left and the right, and it's going to prevent us from moving forward. No matter who wins this election, guys, no matter who comes out on top, I've said I think it's going to be Biden. Whether it was stolen or not, I didn't say it wasn't stolen, in my opinion. Parts of it were. The Democrats knew mail-in voting would get them elected. I mean, they knew it. They knew more Democrats would vote. And they knew all kinds of people would send in 3 ballots, and it's easy. My ballot, like I said, my ballot in my house in LA, somebody forwarded it to me in Florida. I filled it out, signed it, and dropped it in a box when I was back in LA. Anybody could have done that. People get 3 ballots, but you move that person's ballot. The Dems knew what they were doing. But either way, no matter who wins, we got to move forward. So I got 2 great guests in addition to Judd tonight. We're going to get to them in a minute, but I want to give Judd a because Judd, thank you for being here.
Always good to see you,
Judd, you are a fierce conservative, and proud of it. And you've got a book. I'm holding it up. Reasons why not to be a liberal. So if that's not provocative, I don't know what is.
And how to enlighten others.
Oh, see, that's in the fine type
down
down
even
here.
More
How to
offensive.
enlighten others. There, Bruce puts it up so we can see it clearly. And Judd, I want to ask you a couple questions. First of all, I go with the buy the book even if you don't agree with it. That goes back to my, when I had my second book come out and Bill O'Reilly put me on and said, half this book is crap. Put me on his show. It's like, half this book is crap. And I was like, okay. He's like, but I'm going to still tell people you should buy a book because it's a smart book. And Judd's a smart guy. So even if you're like a liberal, you might want to see why conservatives think being a liberal is so bad. So I'm going to put the book down. Judd, before we get to our other 2 guests, I want you to give, and again, I don't want you to go through the book. You read the book if you want to find out. I want you to tell me what the Judd Dunning mission is. You wrote this book for a reason. It's not to get a bunch of people to sit in the library. You want to change how people think.
I do.
What's the mission?
So I just have to say, it made me reflect when we were talking. It's like when I was a liberal, which I was a super liberal when I was younger.
You were?
Oh, for very, very long. Actually,
okay.
I was in college. I got, brainwashed at Colorado State University. I mean, really, it was white, corporatist, racist America back in the 80s. And I was so disgusted. I saw Spike Lee's movie about Malcolm X.
Yeah.
It
was a good movie, by the way.
It was a good movie. I took the LSAT to become an ACLU attorney. And then I was on my way to law school, and then I was going to the Peace Corps. Then suddenly, when I graduated, I sold everything. It's in my book, and I cast off capitalism. My dad was like, "Why did you just sell this new car I just gave you?" And I moved to Europe, never to return, straight up. But, at the time I was an intelligent liberal. And now that when I became a conservative, I'm a stupid, racist, recalcitrant, morally oppressive
Which is Republican. Because you're still the same smart
I'm the same person.
And you're actually I want people to know, I know Jed personally, and this is part of it, because I think our failure to acknowledge people as human, we can't because of their political ideology. Judd is not only a very caring human being, you're sober.
I am sober.
I've watched you. You sponsor lots of guys.
I do.
Don't pick political ideologies. Mm-hmm. You're compassionate. You're spiritual and metaphysical. You're thoughtful. You're caring. And you actually care about people, whether they agree with you or not. So to throw you in a camp, I always joke, Judd's not a racist, but Judd really is not a racist.
Yeah, it's so funny because somebody was challenging me the other day. I'm like, if you look at my recent hiring, right? I hired a white convict, a young Latin man whose family came over the border. His dad supported 5 people for $35,000. I gave him for years. I gave him a chance. Then I had a young black fatherless young fellow whose dad was incarcerated for drugs. I had a Islamic female French immigrant. I mean, I don't even think when I hire people. I hire people who it's the person that comes, puts out their hand. They said, "I'm the person that needs to work for your company." I mean, people say colorblind, right. Conservatism is obtuse, but I really just try to look at their spirit and what they're bringing forward. Right. And that's the essence of the book. Right? So what is the mission of the book?
What's the mission of the book?
So the mission of the book, I think, has changed a little bit. Before the election, it was like, hey, read this, maybe you'll vote for Trump. And now, but fortunately, we're very wise in the sense that we said, you know what, Trump is our employee, Biden's our employee, he's going to be the heck out of here. We are the CEO as American citizens. So we only wrote 1 chapter at the end on Trump and his achievements. And the 13th and a half chapter was abortion, because we believe the time has come where you don't choose your whole ideology just off of that right. core issue, because we've kind of evolved as a society. Right. But the book itself is, when you look at any of the values of ideology between the left, center, and the right, what are the facts? What is the rationale? What is the logic? So you know what you know, so you can consider going deeper spiritually after you read our book.
Okay, so again, I'm going to give you one more shot at this.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to ask one of our guests coming up, Sean, is a radio show host. I'm going to ask him the same question. What's your big mission with this? Because you said you want people to read it. I get it. But if I put this book away, if I never had this book, right now, going forward, what's Judd Dunning's mission with conservatives? Is it to win the conservatives who already won? Is it to win the left? Is it to just add to the intellectual masturbation out there? What's your mission as a writer, as a host? What do you care? What do you want to see happen?
I hit the mission after one quick story. My dad died a couple years ago, and he always just say, just keep the government out of my goddamn business. And I was like, I never understood it. So when he passed away, I went up to a property. We spent like a month there, and we wrote on ideology. And it's really about, what are these words about? Preserving individual freedom and liberty. There's so much disinformation. There's so much information about race. There's so much disinformation about race. There's so much censorship in the First Amendment. There's so much misunderstanding on the Second Amendment. I mean, we have to be conscious citizens now when media is telling us a different thing. So this is about us knowing what we know, and then being able to defend our positions without getting gaslighted and taken out of the sense. I want to preserve freedom.
You want conservatives
to freedom and leave a legacy.
You want us to understand a good conservative, how to fight the fight.
No, and I also want moderates and liberals to understand conservatism. So because there'll be more if there's more understanding, there's more meeting. And I don't think people do.
All right, let's get to it.
Okay.
We're moving. I got 2 awesome guests. I got Sean Thompson and I've got Rami Franco. Rami, thank you guys for being here. Rami, admittedly a leftist. He actually is also kind of a tech genius. He was part of you guys there, Rami? You guys there, Rami? There you go. Hey, Rami. Rami was Rami goes back. He was actually, it's fascinating. I just learned this recently. He kind of does innovative tech and helps companies sort of understand how to problem solve both at an international level and kind of on a media level. But what fascinated me was he helped develop the MPEG-2 for Universal Studios and Panasonic. I mean, that you were talking base. This guy understands technology. We communicate with it, which I think is fascinating. But on the political side, Rami was a Bernie Sanders delegate, so giving him solid credentials. For being on, Thompson, thank you for being here too. We got Sean. Sean, where are you, Sean? There you are. Hey, Sean, thank you for being here. Sean, can we hear you? Hey, Sean. Sean, I'm not sure if we can hear either your audio. We're not hearing Sean. Let's get Sean's audio working. Sean, radio show host in Chicago. I've heard Sean on the radio, and Sean is good on the radio, guys. This guy is like made for radio. He's a good-looking guy, good for TV maybe, but he is the conservative. He does not back down, and he's smart, he's fast, he's witty about it. And I admire both of you guys for having strong points of view. And my goal tonight is to have us sort of have a conversation. We can fight, but I really want us to sort of talk about how we actually as a country can possibly move forward, since we've got a divided country with two very strong viewpoints, and no one's going to get the other side completely to agree, but can we find some way into the center? So thank you guys for both being here. Sean, can we hear you guys, by the way? Let me hear you guys. Are you there?
Hello.
Hey, Rami. Sean, can we hear you? There you are. We got your thumb.
Oh, we don't have
Sean's audio. Hold on, Sean. We don't have your audio. So
thanks, Bob, for the great introduction. I appreciate that. I actually wasn't a Bernie Sanders delegate. I actually ran as a delegate in 2016 for Bernie Sanders. And then I was elected as a KDEM, a California Democratic Party delegate from the 46th Assembly District.
Okay. All right. So listen, I upgraded you a little, Rami, but you know what? In the era of fast and furious fake news, who would know the difference? You know, I'm on it, right? And besides, just being fair, you're more on the left where a lot of stuff gets invented. I'm just saying that to me is the reality. The right doesn't invent as much. And, you know, so we're padding your resume a little bit. I mean,
Joe Biden he doesn't talk about it very often, but he's also a direct relative of the great Viktor Frankl.
Is that true, Rami?
Yes, and also Dolphy Frankl, the painter. Both of them survived Auschwitz. And unfortunately, 72 relatives of mine did not survive.
I'm sorry.
But Viktor and Dolphy both continue to be very productive and do truly wonderful contributions to humanity.
Yeah, for people who don't know, obviously Viktor Frankl was a pretty big figure. You know,
meaning,
what's that?
Yeah, his book, Life's Search for Meaning.
Yeah, huge, and obviously pretty much of a leftist too. Sean, do we have your audio now?
Yes, now we're good. I needed Rami to come to the cigar house and help me, but we seem to have patched it together. But
look, you know what, Sean? By the way, this might be Facebook just, you know, messing with you because you're a conservative. No, not really. This was all on us. Facebook did this one.
I even run from conservative. I have to tell you the truth. I hate those kind of labels because the reality is I was listening to you talk earlier. And the thing about our diversity of opinion, that's the beauty of humanity. We all have a diversity of an opinion. We're different human beings, but we should always have a uniformity of principle. And that principle should be that we should be stoking each other's liberty and freedom. And, you know, one thing I've come to notice is it's amazing to me how the people who hide behind the word liberal, in every single one of their policies, it's about force and control and extortion and manipulation. And me, as somebody who's labeled conservative, I don't want to force anybody to do anything. In fact, every policy I have is about the absence of that. So I think that's something we need to talk about. And then we could get into, you know, what a tragedy it is that people have always been killed. And it never seems to, you know, tragedies of the Holocaust and different kind of atrocities on humanity. And it always seems to come from one philosophy. It always seems to come from one ideology. And that's the ideology of control and manipulation and force. It always seems to come from the left.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
Rami,
it sounds like you're distinguishing between left and fascism.
Rami, that's a fair.
I don't know if we can.
Rami, let me make you respond to that, okay? Because in fairness, and again, I'm the independent here. I'm trying to be really fair about how I see this. I'm also a Libra, so you know, it is hard not to see there's some elemental truth in what Sean is saying, whether you think it's all true. I mean, Hitler was a leftist, you know, Mao was a leftist, You know, Lenin and Trotsky were leftists. They, Castro was a leftist, and they exercised massive control. But more importantly, in the United States, like I made the joke about Gavin Newsom, I'm in California right now. His control, their lockdowns are unbelievable. And yet he goes to a party for one of his political advisors, gets caught red-handed, and then comes back and says, literally, my hands are in the cookie jar. Oops. You know what? I probably shouldn't have done it. Like, you probably shouldn't have done it. You're telling the entire state, you're telling thousands and thousands of businesses to shut down, but you go out and party. And that's where conservatives and independents go, really?
I think the self-sacrificial ideology of the left, which is like we're all going to have higher taxes, we're all going to make sacrifices. I don't think it applies to the elites. And I think that's what we're talking about is like, how does it apply to the common citizen and how does it apply to the elites? And also, Rami, I see you smiling.
Because you're getting beat up on right now. Don't worry.
I think it also doesn't apply.
Even I want to stick up for him now.
To the elite, right? I think it also. So, how much applies to common? And this is the issue. We're talking about freedom. I know Rami from 20 years, and we all love liberty. Matter of fact, we have many civil conversations about the center of America and the way forward.
Rami, you get a chance to talk, and then I want Sean to actually stick up for you. See if he can make the case, and then you can. But Rami,
when you talk, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rob, please. Okay.
No.
So when you talk about people like coming from the left, like Mao Zedong and communism, like I don't even see like modern communism that we've seen in our history as being from the left. I mean, it's ridiculous to even say that, because what communism as an idea is beautiful, but in practice, it has actually led to dictatorship. And I'm absolutely against dictatorship. I think, in fact, the United States should stand up against all dictatorships. The idea of having kings and queens. I mean, we're constantly having candlelight conversations when we're living in a light bulb world. And that's the problem. You guys are talking about the 1900s.
No, I'm talking about Bernie Sanders.
And you're mischaracterizing a lot. Now, Bernie Sanders has some great solutions. And he has some bad solutions, but we have to have balanced, sensible conversations instead of nonsensical conversations. And we just say ridiculous things like Hitler was on the left when he was a fascist, and everybody knows he was a fascist. It's just not a solid ground to begin with.
Well, here's a solid ground, Rami.
Let me finish speaking. I was kind of not to interrupt you, sir. So,
okay.
Let's start with the equilibrium of allowing each other to talk. So let's start with terms that we define and that we're clear about, because just saying liberal is bad or conservatism is good, like you said, Sean, it's nonsensical anymore, because people don't even know what these mean anymore.
Yeah, but we do agree that force is bad, right? We do agree that force, in essence, dictated from a politician is fascistic. Would you not agree?
Well, absolutely. When you talk about the use of force, like people protesting in a peaceful manner across the street from the White House, and you have
the two have nothing to do with each other. That's not at all what I'm talking about.
You said use of force, right? So
I'm saying force. So law. Here's the thing. Rami,
all right.
Pick a policy of Bernie Sanders. It is force. Pick one that is not force.
Okay. I don't know what you're talking about.
If you're forcing me to capitulate, what do you mean? I mean, you could act condescending, Rami, because it's the way to avoid the issue. But I'm specifically talking about the socialistic policy.
You guys are talking over each other. Hold on. Rami, hold on.
You're not a socialist?
I'm not a socialist.
Bernie Sanders is not a socialist.
Socialist. When you say socialism, that means that you believe that the government should control the means of production. Now, Bernie doesn't believe that. I don't believe that.
Poppycock, Rami. You're not talking to your friends. You can do it. You can do it through legislation.
No, that's just not.
Time out.
You can do anything.
Well, you're not going to be honest, then you might as well not have the conversation. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
You are being ridiculous.
Hold on.
Okay, hold on, you guys. Hold on. So I don't want this to devolve into Rami, you using like sort of, I maybe made a mistake in going into the past because I don't think it's really about that. I'm not getting lost in an argument about whether Hitler was a fascist or a leftist or both. What I want to do is I really want us to look at where we are today. So I'm going to ask some questions. And one of the ground rules I want here, you guys, is, let's keep it to something that applies the average person out there listening. So Rami, the average person out there in America who is not a super left person, who's center or right, that person honestly feels, I feel it, that their state governments, often their local governments, have literally imposed restrictions that are extreme and, as Sean would put it, are controlling. And again, they can argue why they did it. But, when you've closed houses of worship, when you've closed businesses, when you've told people to stay home, not celebrate Thanksgiving with other people, and then you go and you let protests happen in celebration of Biden's victory, and you don't say that's bad, you clearly have a government in a state that is trying to control what people do. Would you at least acknowledge, whether you justify it or not, that that's what Sean's referring to as government trying to control you, trying to tell you what you can and can't do.
I have to interrupt. I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. So when we set up tonight's show, we swapped out internet cable. So they're getting a lot of the show is dropping out, Rob. So we need to swap out cable. So can the producer come on for a second, Bruce?
All right, we're taking a technical.
Bring it on, Bruce.
I'm here.
Do you want us to swap the actual cable, or will that disconnect the show? Because Rob,
you're looking good right now. So let's keep going.
If you need us to change, let us know. Just call me, and we'll shift.
You got to keep going.
All right. So real quickly, because we can just before we do this, Bruce, can we swap this hard line out or not?
You're looking good. You don't need to right now.
It's the same.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So go ahead. Rami.
Oh, I think that's a great context, and thank you for being that context. We believe that COVID-19 is truly dangerous and a pandemic, or we don't. And you're right, it has to apply to everyone. I was horrified to see when there was celebrations with most people wearing masks, but the fact is they weren't socially distancing. Yes, they were dancing in the street because they were happy that Trump had lost. However, it was not good social policy. The proper social policy at that point would have been for people in positions of authority and respect to say, stop it, go home, celebrate individually at home, celebrate on your Zoom.
But Rami, they don't, and that's Sean's point. The government, the left media, they don't say stop it. They only say stop it if it's a conservative activity. So you can say that's a great idea, but the very governments you're saying aren't trying to control people clearly say you can do A but not B, no matter how hypocritical it is.
I hear what you're saying, Rob, and forgive me, but I watched a lot of news coverage, especially since the election before and especially after the election day, and I saw many times commentators saying that this was bad, that there was so many people celebrating in the street. I saw it on CNN at least a few times. So I did see it, and I agreed with those commentators because it was destructive, and it's bad. If I didn't hear about the Newsom story, but anytime people are not taking care of other people in a pandemic, and that is taking care of people, I define as wearing a mask. If we need to close down businesses, I'm an entrepreneur and a capitalist. I believe in capitalism, and it's horrible anytime anybody has to close down their business. Yet, if it saves lives, then sometimes we have to take extreme measures.
All right, Sean, I want you to address that because Rami's point, and appreciate Rami you acknowledging it, although FYI, I watched the media too, and they barely called it out, but that's all right. But Sean, Rami says they have to do it, and I think that's where you would go. Who are you to tell me you have to do this? Like, let me decide my best interest.
Yeah. In any society where I do not have the right to disagree, the right to my own opinion, or the right to my property, then I am a slave, and I will not be one. I'll burn it down myself. You could roll your eyes all you want, and there are many ways to legislatively take over property and the means of productions. There are many ways to regulate and backdoor nationalize numerous properties. In fact, in your own example of what we're talking about, I'm sitting here in a cigar store that I own. It's one of the businesses I own. I'll open the door no matter what anybody says. And I'll let people decide for themselves if they're willing to take the risk to live or not. Because in all of this pandemic and all of this hyperbole, they refuse to admit that COVID-19 has a mortality rate of 1.5%. 1.5%. We as individuals, as humans, as free men, have the right to decide our own risk tolerance.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Simple.
And why, Rami?
I disagree with that because, first of all,
You're a fascist.
I'm not a doctor. I'm not a fascist. And to call me a fascist is very disrespectful. And
okay, I'll let you prove it then.
An ad hominem attack, which is basically very weak, Sean, to use.
Okay, now prove it.
At me. Okay, yeah, I'm not a fascist.
I know
fascist is very disrespectful.
Him as a man from the right. He's not a fascist. He's a rationalist.
Yeah, clearly, obviously.
Okay.
But, okay. So moving on, though.
Okay, but Rami, hold on.
For example,
Rami,
when you build a wall and you use government dominance to take people's lands, I mean, that's government doing.
I'm not for eminent domain. I fight eminent domain constantly.
I'm against that too.
Look at us.
So great. So I'm glad we're finding some areas to agree. But I think at the same time, I'm not sure about your statistic about the health risk of COVID. But when people's actions endanger other people, it's good when there's some regulation to step in and say, no, this is not just you do whatever you want. You don't get to yell fire in a theater. You don't get to just do whatever you want.
You're the one yelling fire.
When it can damage and hurt other people. You don't get to do just things that can hurt other people.
You're yelling fire.
And you want to smoke in your business, then you smoke as much as you want. If you're
yelling fire and you're causing other people to shut down businesses.
But that's not
You're saying you know better than the business people.
Loudly and loud, like blah, blah, blah. But the fact of the matter is, you're not being honest and you're not being genuine. And what you're saying is ridiculous.
You're the one that wants to shut down businesses. I want to keep them open.
I want to protect people.
Hold on. I haven't talked that much.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in. So,
protecting
by the way,
people.
can you hear us clearly now? Because we cleaned up.
You don't get to protect me, Rami.
Well, I don't need to protect you, but you have an effect on other people.
Rob, I'm going to start muting people so that way you guys can talk.
Yeah, you got to
mute Bruce, real quick. Can you hear us, Bruce?
Yeah, of course.
Is our feed good?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. All right. So you guys, Judd wants to talk for a second.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's just be humans. Let's not be on a talk show for a second. All right.
Yep. I like that.
So first of all, Rami and I are 20-year friends, Sean. Sean did an amazing interview on my book the other day in Chicago for Steve Cortez. He's a great host. Rob is a passionate independent. You know, the night that we had the election, we had a mixed crowd of people here that have a respectful opinion, and I am fiercely to the right. I think the election was stolen. I don't like any obstruction to individual rights, but I respect the fact that we had this diametric pressure that goes back and forth, 51-49, 49-51. I think the process was contaminated, and I think that people like Rami are standing their ground. People like Sean are standing their ground, but we are devolving right now into the base arguments of left and right. Now, Sean, you're a new friend of mine, but I know there's somewhere else we can go. And I'm interested because Rami's actually going to write the response to my right-wing book with me. So we've got a rationalist on there. We've got a very intelligent person. And a lot of people, I have so many friends. Let me just say this. I have so many friends blowing up, like losing friends during this election. Rami and I, he's the most left-leaning guy I know, and we have the best conversations, and that's America. So I'd like us to get to there with Rob Show. What's the way forward?
Yeah,
How can we find that?
Well, this is the agreement. This is the agreement that Rami and I should have if we are principled in Americanism, right? The agreement is very simple. If you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in the individuality that the Constitution is built around the Enlightenment, then you believe on my base freedom. Simple. You believe on my right to disagree. Only one of us is promoting policies that eliminate the other's ability to disagree. See, to me, that's very simple. That's very straightforward. I don't want to ever control Rami's opinion. I don't want to control his business. I don't want to control his work environment. You see, in this conversation, I'm the liberal because I believe in the principles of Americanism. Everything else is not.
Rami, so I want you to respond. And here's my goal. My goal is a common ground. So I'm going to ask you guys both one thing. Rami, you got upset that Sean called you a fascist. I get it. So no name calling, please. But Rami, you keep making this smirk every time he talks, which is the equivalent of saying you're an idiot. I'm just being honest, watching. So to me, no, I'm just saying, like, if Sean is a smart guy and you're a smart guy. So I want, show that same respect you want him to show you, because every time you smirk, it's sort of suggesting he's an idiot, and he's not. He's making a really valid point, as are you. And I want to find where that common ground is. But he's saying, I feel like the right is censored. And I think it's hard not to argue that's a case. I mean, I don't know, you could say there not be.
Rob, if that's what he said, then we could actually have a conversation, but that's not what he's saying. And I appreciate your translation of what he's saying, because if that's what he says, then we can actually talk about.
Okay, hold on. Let's start there. Hold on. Let's start there. Let's start with a common ground point, because we can argue all day. So common ground point, Sean, I think you would agree that you feel the right is being told what it can do, what it can't do, whether you can have dissent, whether you can have disagreement. That would be a statement you would agree with, right, Sean?
Unequivocally.
So, you said if that's what he's saying, we can start a dialogue. So he's unequivocally saying that.
Well, I think there's times that people on the right are being censored, and I think it's not right. I believe that everybody's opinions should be heard. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the best policy for a society.
But let's start there, Ron.
Well, it is a foundation that everybody should have the right to express themselves.
But Rami,
press is a fundamental part of liberalism.
But Rami, but can you hear me?
Yes.
You don't.
I can.
I just need you to acknowledge it's almost impossible. I mean, people on the left say, no, it's both sides. The reality is, if you say, look, even Trump saying there's fraud, he's allowed to say there's fraud. I used the example earlier, the Daily Wire guy saying, let's go to court. The New York Post publishing a story about Hunter Biden that nobody disputed necessarily was or wasn't true, but was clearly investigated by the FBI. Simply reporting those facts got their Twitter feed blocked until they would take it down. That is not happening to the left. It only happens on the right. So just start by, if we can at least acknowledge that, would you think that's okay? I mean, because it clearly does happen.
Well, those are examples. And I'd say, like, for example, when, people on the left and Democrats were very upset when, for the first time, Comey came out and a couple of days before the election gave his opinion about an investigation, which was completely ridiculous. And that was covered in excess. Hillary's lost emails was covered in excess. Yeah. So there are times when also the Democrats suffer from the vulgarities of the press. And
that was pre-Trump.
I mean, so to always say, it's only happens to the Republicans or it only happens to the Democrats.
It does.
I don't think that's very accurate. And
Rami, and I'm going to switch it back in a minute. But Zuckerberg and Twitter CEO Dorsey both were asked in Congress to name one prominent liberal person or group that had been censored, and they couldn't name one. They literally couldn't name one. They're like, "We'll get back to you." It's like they couldn't come up with one because it almost never happens. So I'm going to say, if you're going to sit there and say it's even, I think you're missing an opportunity. Because I think you have some really great ideas, but I think part of the problem the middle and the left and the right have is this blanket denial that there's a double standard out there. And I think there is.
Yeah, I just want to say, I know Robbie's in Shabbat tonight, and I'm in Shabbat, and I just saw your family. So, Shabbat Shalom.
Yeah,
Shabbat
thank
shalom,
you.
my
Thank
brother.
you. Thank
So
you.
listen, I think Rob is dead on point. He's identifying the media as changed in the last 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, post-Trump.
It's definitely gotten
Trump.
more aggressive. I mean, they just said today in the news that 20% Twitter action was foregone to repress information after the election that challenges fraud. Anytime I post anything right now, I'm being blocked as misinformation. If I'm tracking any alternative information, this is really bad. But I want to say this, guys. I want to say, so here we know the media is involved, etc. So what is the common ground? I'm interested in this conversation. So we know we've been censored, Rob, and you've really been pounding that. You've also talked about the existence of systemic racism, which Sean and I might have different opinions of, but I respect the fact that it's on the table. So what do we do over the next 4 years? Yeah. I think it's difficult when I see the dream team, the socialist wish list of the Biden of the Biden administration coming to the forefront. They're setting up the president, the office of the president-elect. Our country's still in chaos right now. I mean, Sean and I are kind of in a position where, hey, you don't give up until you have verification, certification, and litigation, and you don't really want to pander and seek healing right now. So what do we do right now, America? What do we do from the left, and what do we do right? Because I am getting offended by leftists telling me to just get over it and heal and put my head down. I'm like, wait a minute, I need to know what to do right now. These are weird times.
So let me ask it in reverse. Rami, you hold on for a second. Sean, let me ask you, because you're kind of taking from what Judge said that it's, you're sort of feeling, hey, we're not, in a position to right now suddenly put out the olive branch. What has to happen in your mind to find? I mean, let's just assume, I'm going to just say, I think Biden wins the presidency, whether he should have or not, whatever the reasons, I think he does.
No.
Okay, I know, Judge, you disagree, but let's just say he does. How do conservatives move forward in a way that doesn't just continue, or does it just continue this sort of growing cavernous divide where there's no middle ground and nothing really changes for millions of Americans who are struggling, who do need help? I do think there's real problems in our inner cities. There are people really in need. And I know conservative ideas may fix some of that, but you're not going to get those on the table if we're just in a FU mode.
I'm from Chicago. You know that, right? It is, right. It's the Democrat 100 years of leadership here. How's it worked out? It's terrible. Last Monday night, they had 17 kids shoot each other on the south side of Chicago. They pretend that this is some Jets and street gang argument versus a drug industry where they're fighting for territory, versus steeped on political failure after political failure, corrupt politician after corrupt politician. There is no utopia where government is in charge of anything, right? What has to happen is we have to have the sustained principles, the fundamental principles of human rights, of respecting each other as individuals. That cannot come from a society that wants to socially engineer itself. The only way we're going to have harmony and peace is if we give people the freedom and the right to disagree with each other. I get nervous when I hear these schemes. I didn't vote for Trump in 2016. Did you know that? I felt he was too much of a collectivist. So this isn't I wrote none of the above. I wrote none of the above on my 2016. And the reason is because I truly do fight collectivism. I truly do love the idea that this country is supposed to protect the right of the individual. The only minority in this country, the real minority, is the individual, regardless of what color he is, regardless of what religion he is. We don't do that anymore.
Let's shift gears for a second.
Do I think we can heal? And the answer is no. You want a solution that's going to make you feel good. Unfortunately, we have irreconcilable differences. Unfortunately.
Okay, hold on. So if that's the case, how do we break a cycle where I believe in 2 years there'll be a sweep of Congress if Biden does a lot of what he wants to the red? No. I think it'll go red. But I mean, how do then it'll we'll still just have this standoff in which a lot of the ideals I think everybody here, the outcomes everybody here would like, which is a better quality of life, won't exist.
Rob, if you have no faith in the system, Rob, why would you vote? Why would I vote? I mean, I married a Union Democrat president's daughter. First time ever. She's a huge Trump person, believe it or not. Although if you know unions, you know why she's a Trump person.
Right.
The reality is she's never going to vote again, kid. Her and 50 of her friends, they're done. You've disenfranchised the people. I believe that Biden is an illegitimate president-elect, and I revoke my consent to be governed by a system I have no faith in. So you want to know what I really think? I think that this country will break apart. I think it'll break apart within the next 10 years. I think the red states will rightfully be disgusted and not want to bail out the corrupt mafia states of the Democrat Party, like the one I live in and the one you live in, where hypocrisy is the norm. I think you'll have a move to secede, and I think you'll have America break into several countries. That's what I think. Okay,
so that's a dark picture. I appreciate that. Makes me want to go have a shot of whiskey, but I am an eternal optimist and a believer that the beauty of America is that we are capable of not living in extremes. And I think right now we are. And Sean, I get what you're saying. And I think, Rami, what I would say is I think millions of people feel what Sean feels, feel angry, frustrated, disenfranchised, censored. And the reaction to that is, F you, we're going to just let you sink on your own terms and we'll take care of ourselves. That's not a great outcome. That's not a win-win for America. So, Rami, putting it to you as the potentially victorious
got to get my charger. 1 second.
Selection. What do you say?
Well, first of all, the good news is we had more people vote in this election cycle than I believe ever before. That's beautiful. That's democracy working.
Yeah, I agree.
But you know what? The fact that Trump got so many votes in terms of numerically is also. I mean, yes, there was pollsters that misdiagnosed once again the true temperature of the American people. That being said, even though they were completely off and wrong, the fact that so many people voted for Trump and more people voted for Biden is a victory for democracy. And also, people voted, they didn't like Trump, yet they did like their Republican senators. And so that's another triumph of democracy, because people made a choice. And I believe, yeah, there's a lot of people that are divided. It's a huge divide. We're looking at a couple of percentage points between Biden and who voted for Trump. It's not a huge difference here.
It's a massive divide. And we just had a comment from a Reddit user who said, it's back to 2016, not my president. But now it's conservatives. And my concern is that again, Rami, I'm pushing it out to you because I think I understand where the frustration of people right of center and even a lot of independents feel that there is no room for that. They felt that the fact that they can't even say they think there was fraud, like it's like, okay, like at a certain point, you're not going to win this country that way. You're going to only lose it. Joe Biden's a scarecrow president. I mean, you're going to lose the country. I mean, Bernie Sanders had a vision. He would have fought for something. Joe Biden's like a puppet, literally. I mean, who voted for Joe Biden? They just voted against Donald Trump. I'm being honest.
Can I also just add one thing to Rami? Because he seems like, he's obviously a brilliant kid. He's a smart guy. Now I'm in Chicago.
I just want to say, and I want to recognize this. I appreciate at my age. I appreciate being called. My age. I'm grateful that someone has called me a kid.
It's an old Chicago. I'm 52, but if I took my shirt off, you'd never know it. Anyway, here's the reality. You want me to believe that Joe Biden didn't do as well as Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton in Chicago, in New York, in New Jersey, in California. But you want me to believe that these districts in Hodunk, Michigan, in Hodunk, Wisconsin, and in Georgia, he had a 98% turnout. Rami, you're a brilliant kid, and I call you a kid again. It's a mathematical impossibility, brother. That software, it is rigged. I'm sorry, it's illegitimate. Do it over or don't ever talk to me again about a fair voting system, because I'll burn every machine I see. And that's just how I feel, brother. I hope we can at least agree as intelligent people that it's a mathematical anomaly that could never happen.
I mean, I'm sure she felt the same way. I mean, she felt the same way when she won the popular vote but lost the electoral vote. Almost the opposite. It was she only had 232 electoral votes, and Trump had 306. And now it's the opposite. Now Biden has 306 electoral votes.
That's a coincidence, huh?
232.
It is.
So
Hey, that's an unusual coincidence, Robbie. There's one of those anomalies again.
Maybe we're just in a simulation and some greater being is playing with us all to see if we can find our humanity. But let me say something. The fact that, look, I don't expect either one of you or Judd. I mean, Judd and Romney know each other, but I don't expect you guys to suddenly agree with the other side. But for my little experiment, the fact that you can laugh and joke and make fun of each other in a healthy way, like calling them kid, like, oh, wow, thank you for that, respect each other. To me, that's what's been missing in America, that if you have a different view, it's like, F you, you're a racist, you're a horrible human being, versus no, all right, I'm not going to agree with you. I'm not going to think you're right, but I can at least treat you as a human being. To me, that's at least where humanity and democracy has a shot. I mean, would you guys agree with that?
I have no ill will towards Rami. I have no ill will towards anybody.
No,
I mean it. I don't want to force anybody to do anything. And, before we go, I just want to say something. I know you're both Jewish. I worked at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which actually was a tremendous changing in my life. It saved my life, and a Jewish fellow was integral in it. And I'm fascinated by tyranny around the world and how people have really slaughtered each other. I find it amazing. It's always about political beliefs. And you know what astonishes me? The way that the Jewish people, the way they stoked hatred for the Jewish people in Germany, in Nazi Germany. Do you know how it was originally? They accused them of being rabid individualists and capitalists. That's how they stoked the hatred. They accused them of never caring about the country more than themselves because they were capitalists. So, I'm very aware and very afraid when people try to social engineer society and income and individuals. That's why I think we should all watch it. We should all be very aware how easy. It's not that long ago that happened, unfortunately.
Right.
Could happen again.
It's a good point, Rami. Let me pick that up because obviously, you talked about the number of people lost in your heritage line, bloodline to that. And Sean's point is a really strong one, which is the Jews were attacked and persecuted for being different, for being individuals, for being capitalists, for trying to stand for that. And it wasn't just about their faith, right? I mean, it was actually about how they represented themselves as a Jew and as a descendant of that, but also as someone who's, a democratic socialist. How do you respond to that? Because that is what conservatives feel. The attack is on our individuality and that it's not on our policies.
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't consider myself a democratic socialist.
Okay, sorry, I put that one in.
But that's okay. But that being said, yeah, it is a major fear of the Jewish community. Not that I'm speaking for the entire Jewish community, but always a concern is being scapegoated, is anti-Semitism. I'm an American, a loyal American. I love this country, and yeah, I'm always concerned when any country starts trending towards fascism. But because Rami, oftentimes fascism is linked with demonization of minorities, and anytime a leader demonizes a minority, like calling some Mexicans rapists and some Mexicans good, when you start demonizing any minority, my red flags go up.
Okay, Rami, but here I want to stick to this for a second. But I was asking you about Sean's point that the true demonization has not been of Mexicans and black people. I mean, they voted in higher numbers for Trump. The media's made a lot out of that. But the reality is, I'm talking about Sean's point that there has been a demonization, not of a minority, but of a sort of they become a minority in the sense that the media kind of makes it seem that way, but of people who are more conservative. And Trump supporters in general get labeled as racist. People who, so to his point, does that not scare you that we could do that and that's destructive to the soul of a fabric of a country?
Certainly, when after Charlottesville and you had people marching saying Jews will not replace us, that was very scary for someone like me. But let me finish. But when that happened, people marching with torches saying Jews will not replace us, and then the top of our leadership didn't condemn that and said there were good people on both sides. That's scary. That feels like towards fascism.
On both sides of removing history, though, that's the most distorted fact of racism. We covered that in our book. The actual framing of that is there are good people on both sides of whether we should replace or remove history, and that's another media lie that has gone down this racist line. But I'm actually
it was a poor choice of words. It wasn't a common.
Rami,
it would have been the right move.
Rather than argue about this, and you're both, okay, I get the point. Let's not forget how it happened, Rami. It's because the Nazi political party seized control of the German Congress and the German hierarchy. People are people, Rami. You know this. There's going to be an idiot that cuts you off and gives you the finger every Tuesday. It's just the way it happens. It's not about people or their ability to be morons and bigots and racists. Let them exist because they show themselves to be the idiots they are. It's the greatest way to identify a scumbag and a moron. So I don't want them to pretend they're not what they are. I like when they show me what they are. I'm talking about a political body that makes policies to destroy and make people conform because they hated them because they were individuals. They demonized them because they refused to capitulate. They didn't want to be part of a fabric. Yeah, that's the broader point, Rami.
I hear what you're saying.
Rami,
if we
Rami, hold on.
Rami,
hold on. I want because we're running out of time. I want you to focus on the modern day application of that. What Sean is saying is that is what we have done to people who do not buy the left of center narrative. That is what happens if you say people are scared of getting fired from their jobs. They get beaten up on social media for saying, I support Trump. I mean, so I want to address it because you're laughing.
I'm laughing.
You're laughing, but it's a real thing.
The reason why I'm laughing is because I work in the C-suite, and all the investors and all the people in the C-suite are all very pro-Trump. And I'm like the only liberal there. So I'm laughing because I experienced the world in the exact opposite that you're describing.
You're the minority.
I'm definitely a minority in my company. And a lot of times when I'm in venture capital meetings, when I'm in executive meetings, I'm the only liberal in the room. So I experienced what you're describing, and so I mean, I totally sympathize with that, and I don't think it's right. I think that's what makes America truly great is when we can all be individuals, when we can choose our own beliefs, and sometimes we don't agree. Sometimes Trump wins, sometimes a Democrat wins, and that's just the way it is. And you know what? And it's such a slight percentage. And because you have such a divided country, it's almost 50-50, that's going to happen. Sometimes the Democrats are going to win. Sometimes the Republicans are going to win. This time, it looks like a Democrat won. And, if there's truly any... if there's truly any fraud, then it needs to be brought up, and those people should be charged and persecuted. Because you know what? Voting is our sacred right and our sacred responsibility, and it needs to be protected because it's separate.
We have a few minutes left, and Jed wants to jump in. Rami, can I get you to at least acknowledge that there was fraud? That everything you're seeing, whether it's enough to sweep the election, every account you're seeing is not made up. It clearly was fraud, and most come out has been for Biden. Could you at least acknowledge that instead of being like, no, it never happened?
Okay.
I'm not saying
let me tell you a very personal story. I was at a friend's house, and he's not a citizen of this country. And he told me, he didn't show it to me, but he told me that he registered to vote and he received a ballot. And he didn't vote though. And I'm glad he didn't vote because if he would have, if he would have, it would have been a felony. And maybe the experiment would have been really shown out if he would have voted, because it's not, I don't know if it's illegal to register to vote, but it's certainly illegal to vote. It's a felony. And I'm glad he didn't pursue his experiment, because if he would have, he could be a felon.
Well, no, he wouldn't catch the people.
Well,
Judd, you want to
I
jump
don't know
in? We only
about that, but that it's still a felony to illegally vote. But I gotta admit that I was disturbed by the fact that he even received a ballot. And if that's happening,
Rami,
other places in the country, then that's something that needs to be fixed.
but it is. But Rami, do you know? And Judd wants to get in here. Do you realize how much of an olive branch it would be if Joe Biden, if the mainstream media on the left could come out and say, "We get it, fraud happened. We don't think it's enough to change the course of the election, but you're not smoking meth." As the Reddit guy said about John, you think it happened because we all see tons of examples of how it happened.
Well, I don't know about tons of examples. That's one example that I did see.
So there's hundreds and hundreds.
Maybe there are more, but we need to. Our voting system needs to be protected, and we need to do everything that we can do.
I think we can all agree on that.
So
We all agree.
As possible.
The bottom line, this is actually really frustrating because I really enjoy Rob. I really enjoy Todd and Rob.
Judge feels
we got to do another.
The white conservative here feels marginalized.
No, because we have two extremes.
Let's give Judge some. What do we give him? Snowflake.
This could go.
You win too, Judge.
Leave me alone. This could go a little far. This could go all night, right? But the bottom line, Rami, this is the thing I'm challenged with. And I mean, you're one of my dear friends, buddy. It was 578 votes, 577 votes in the last election. It was 37 days of process. Nobody claimed it. The media didn't award it. And the left is literally, they're stoking the flames of civil war. They're stoking the flames of negation. If we happen to win, this country's going to burn. If you guys happen to win, it's not going to burn. And I want Democrats to reach across the aisle and say, hey, I need to validate. I mean, look, 578 votes. We know hundreds of thousands of votes are involved in this. I want to revote. I'm to the point now, I'm reading so much media. You're very intelligent. I'm very intelligent. We both are doing so much research. I feel negated. I do feel marginalized. And I want our system. I want a recount. I want the entire election to happen again.
The whole thing over again. Absolutely.
That ain't happening. But here's the thing as we wrap this up.
Me too.
One, Rami, Jim Stock just put up one of our viewers put up a thing saying his children can't say they work for Nike in Portland because they're in trouble. And the difference is you can tell your coworkers you're liberal. But my bigger one I want to get to is somebody before that said, oh my God, fraud believers. And Rami, that's what scares me, that we've got lots of people out there who've been driven in kangaroo cowboy. You've been driven by a media narrative that has told you there was no fraud. I'm not saying that fraud shifted the election.
Is what he said.
Yeah. Right.
Well,
I'm saying,
I'm not saying.
Hold on. There's a narrative out there so strong that if you merely say, and I'm not saying Trump's saying the election was stolen. I'm saying to say there was fraud, you're somehow being called like you're a cuckoo. When we see tons of, I mean, you could have to have fraud if you're doing mail-in ballots. I know all kinds of people who got multiple ballots to their houses, people who didn't live there anymore. I mean, of course you had fraud. This is just deny that's even true. That's what scares me. And that's where I think the left is in trouble if they won't, come to the middle on that.
The messaging needs to be, let's figure it out. Let's get through the process and then heal rather than you need to get over it and heal. It's just tearing us apart, man. And we are being minimized when we bring that up, which is also being repressed by big tech and censorship on top of that, that is the scary thing, is that the media has this much power to marginalize and limit any kind of opposition to let's check the vote.
That is scary.
It is a big deal, right? But I want to tell you something. I don't care if Trump lost. I don't care. I'm a conservative. I don't care if he lost. If he actually lost, great.
Right.
System. If he might have won, I need to know before I can support Biden.
So, and if 74 million people want an 80-year-old on Viagra running the country who can't change a tire but thinks they could run the country, I don't like those people either. No, I'm just kidding. Rami. I wanted to end it on a hostile note.
So you guys, we got to wrap it up. But can we do this again some point? Can we have a round of this?
I had a great time. I'm very flattered.
Likewise, I'd be honored to be. And also, I gotta say, I've been reading Judd's book, and it is beautifully written. And while I don't agree with everything, the content, but the intro and his personal story of discovery and his journey from liberalism to conservatism is fascinating and is insightful. And I look forward to reading the rest of the book.
Oh, you guys listen.
And you're all good kids.
We're all kids now. The guy's 100. He's got something going on.
Chicago talk. We love you.
Listen, you guys. My whole thing is always, thank you guys for being here. My whole thing is about, I am determined. As Judd knows, anybody out there watching knows, I will not stop trying to find the common ground. And I will not stop trying to argue for what I think is true and not true and be fair about it. And I've been pretty clear on this. And someone's going to look at me and be like, oh, you're a conservative. And the truth is, I'm not. I mean, you can say I have conservative views in some things, liberal views in other things. And the reality is, I'm just determined to get to the truth. But I also am determined that people will have different views of truth. People have different views of what they think is right. We have to keep finding common ground. This dialogue, whether everybody suddenly agreed with each other, no sudden big moment. But there was a humanity in it, and I appreciate that from you guys and everybody out there. This is where it starts, because otherwise, Sean's prediction that we just splinter apart and ultimately state starts to see, that's not a good outlook for the future of America. If you actually care about the country, if you actually care about what's going to happen to millions and millions of people who actually want to have a good life, and I'm also talking about those most impoverished, those most who are like, if you're on the left, how about those impoverished communities, those underserved communities that you clearly say you care about? You're not doing them any favor. I'll be honest, I've talked to tons of people in those communities as I've been doing my show who tell you they don't feel like the Democrats have done much for them. They don't feel like Black Lives Matter did much for them. They feel like their needs and problems just get ignored over and over again. If you actually care about them, then we need to find a common ground, because otherwise we just continue a cycle of destructive violence and division, and both sides will just keep playing at it. That's my last take on it. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for all activity. You guys are a guest. We're going to do this again. Thanks, Judd. Read his book, 13 and a Half Reasons Not to Be a Liberal. Rami's reading it, and he is a liberal.
Come see our show.
Come see our show, Smack and Cheese, talking smack over
talking smack over mac and cheese, 1:30 on Sunday. It's great to make a show at the Independent. We're enjoying it a lot.
We are. Thank you guys for watching.